Hey, I'm back again. We had a power cut, so I was doing okay on it, I thought, in the light, but then realized that I was going to be reading a letter for using the Wi-Fi, and of course that went off. But I'm back again now. So the letter that touched me the most, and they're all, there's another few letters which would certainly deserve the same, but this one covered such a lot of bases about the fears of people who are sometimes enablers for people who are alcoholics. But these are the people that are caught in family situations, and it ain't pretty and it ain't happy. But listen to what this man talks about. He made this public, so I don't think he would mind me saying his name, which is Casey. So Casey, thanks for sending this in, and I hope you won't mind me sharing it in this way. I grew up with an alcoholic, I think, father. Watched as my siblings, 2 brothers, 1 sister, all followed suit. Becoming addicted, younger brother was killed in a car accident 1 week. 1 week before his 3rd child was born. I helped raise her, giving her her father figure in her life. The remaining siblings are still hardcore daily drinkers, both around 60 years now, and no sign of changing, even though they know it is killing them. This is the problem. After my mother's passing, there was no one left to tell me my drunk. Not quite sure how this, sometimes autocorrect really messes things up. No one left to tell me my drunk and always right about everything. So I distanced myself from them 10 years ago. I tried to get them help, but first they need to accept their addiction, and that will never come because their alcoholic abuse is not a problem in their eyes. Now this is very real, and this is one of the reasons that when people go to Alcoholics Anonymous, the biggest step that they make towards realizing their problem is in getting up in front of a sympathetic audience. In other words, not someone who tells them that they're right, but someone who understands the fight. So getting up and saying, my name is, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's the huge step. So until because they need to accept their addiction, and that will never come because their alcoholic abuse is not a problem in their eyes. Even if it's family, you can only watch the destruction for so long before you simply throw in the towel. Now listen to the words that he's using there. He's saying you can only watch the destruction, and that is what is happening. It's not people just having a good time and spending money and acting silly and stuff like that. It's destruction, and you have to understand that, and you have to accept it, and there's only so much you can do, and after that you are enabling them. And sad to say that, as Casey did 10 years ago, you have to simply get out of there. Very well articulated, the destructive forces at play with alcohol, Mr. T. He's talking about what I said. My lady in Taliban was awakened to a big commotion outside of 3 a.m. your time this morning. Another murder, and I would hazard and guess it was alcohol or drugs that perpetrated another senseless death. It appears that this type of violence is an ongoing problem that appears to be growing. Overpopulation and not enough jobs is fueling this crisis, as well as if feel Not quite sure how it ended there, but I think you get the point. What I observed was that because people in fact could not, they could not understand that the alcohol immediately changes the way that you think. You can't tell this to somebody. You can't explain it to them. You can't, how can you say to someone, the way that you are thinking is not yours. That is not your way of thinking. That's not the right thing to do. I used to get people make great jokes which were really funny. They were really funny. One guy always used to say, you know what, I pity people who don't drink, because when they get up in the morning, that's as good as it's going to be. In other words, what he was saying was that his day would be so much better with drink. That's a very, very sad thing to think about. So, another letter that I got, which perhaps I can find while we're talking, was on the effects of alcohol actually on the brain. Yeah, that's not one there. But the effects of alcohol on the brain are actually quite measurable. See, this is it now. It says the case against alcohol. It says, when it comes to alcohol, the rationality goes out of the window. The one who is addicted has massive forces to struggle against. This is what you have to understand. This is not just a question of, I don't know, the nearest I can come to it is my own addiction with sugar. I mean, you know, honestly, if somebody sends chocolates and Beth goes against our agreement and keeps some of them in the fridge, I'll eat some of them. So I do understand this. It says massive forces to struggle against. Their brains are structured in a special way. They have player brains. Science can scan our brains and tell you if you have one or not. So, someone once told me that I have an addictive personality. I wasn't pleased to hear that, but it kind of put the wind up me, if you like. And I noticed that there was one particular drink which I felt was just a few percent alcohol, and it was what I think was called a sparkling wine. So it looked like it was a champagne, poor man's champagne, and it would just be a few pounds to buy, a few pounds sterling. So maybe $5 or $6 is what it would have cost. And I remember that we would get a couple of bottles, and to my dismay, I found that I could drink an entire bottle of this. Now, you've got to understand that this was a bottle of sparkling wine that I think was 2 or 3% alcohol content. So it possibly gave you a little buzz, but it was a great taste. Now, where did my scare come in? Nothing dramatic. Okay, I didn't find myself lying in the gutter, not remembering where I was or who I was. I just liked to have this as a drink, and I could quite happily drink it and get up feeling great the next morning, only feel the slightest little buzz. In my days in the army, when at the weekend we would go out, and I'd play in a jazz club at the weekend in Reading in Berkshire, and I used to play at a little jazz club, a little tin pot thing that was over the coffee bar, and it was called the Latin Quarter, a very grand name for a very simple little place. But we played, and I played in the band there, and we had a little jazz group, and I used to play trombone, and we used to have a great time, and I used to drink. And it wasn't that I drove, But I would have a drink and I was completely unaware that it wasn't a good thing. And then there came the young boy bragging the next day, "Oh boy, was I drunk last night? I can hardly remember a thing. Did I have a good time?" You know, those kind of jokes. And I began to realize when I left the army, that went on for maybe a year, where at the weekend I would drink. The next day I would feel so bad it would take me a week to get over it, and then the following weekend I'd have another drink, and we'd brag about how great we were, and we shouldn't have, because we weren't great. So I understand how people can feel, but having really, in a way, having been told that I was an addictive personality, I thought, wait a minute, if I start to like something, that's the point at which I'm going to stop. And I'm going to stop until I no longer feel like doing that. So if you found something that you really like, say doing, by way of a drink that you enjoy, and it's in what is commonly called a social situation. People say to me, "No, I don't drink. I'm what they call a social drinker." Okay, I would think in that way too, but then I had warning bells went off in my head. Wait a minute, you've got a taste for this. So the taste for something is when the body is almost introducing into your taste buds awareness, can we call it that you need to have that drink. And that's what's happening. It's nothing, believe me, it's nothing benign. This is a warning sign that you need to heed. So if you get to a point where you've been going out and meeting the same pal, and you've been waiting for a bus or something, and you always have half an hour or 3/4 of an hour to wait for the same bus or the same this or the same that, and you go in and you have a beer, and the first time a beer is as much as you can take. If you're like me, a non-drinker, one beer would be enough for me, and probably by the end of the beer I'd be glad I'd finished. But given time, I would be able to drink a whole beer. Oh gosh, I can hear you drinkers saying, "Oh, you are such a raver, sir. Oh, one whole beer." I used to have a friend that laughed at me for that. And when he offered me a second beer if I went round to see him, I would actually say, in truth, not trying to be funny, I'd say, "No, I won't have that second beer, thank you, because if I have 2 beers, the ends of my fingers go numb." And my friend laughed at me. "Oh, really? Well, you know, you're not part of the A-team." And his wife admonished him by saying, "Hold on, wouldn't you like to have your fingers go numb after only 2 beers?"
Darling,
so,
you're gonna eat now.
Okay, I'm coming. I'll be there. So, I wanted to read that letter, and another one that said, "Thank you for doing this video on alcoholism. I was an alcoholic, I think," and I'm going now just from memory, I think he said that he had been an alcoholic for 10 years. I could be wrong. Please forgive me if that's not true, but I'm not mentioning any names. He said that he had been an alcoholic for 10 years and had been sober for 3. And I said, wow, what an incredible achievement. Well done, sir. And I'm repeating that now. You are a hero. What you've done for yourself and for the people around you cannot cannot be measured high enough. So thank you. Thank you for doing it, for you and for everybody else. For the other, Casey, who told us his story, that story is common. It's not a story that is rare. I remember one of the guys who does the motivational speeches, Anthony somebody or other, and it's a very clever guy, has become enormously famous, has had his services, which are totally self-taught, requested by the army, by the president. He's met the president, he's just done everything. Has just become incredibly famous, and everybody knows his name except me. Well, he actually talked about a person who had been into drugs, and in order to feed his habit, he had gone into a drugstore, not into a drugstore, like a convenience store, and he had made the counter clerk lie on the ground, and then, for reasons best known to himself, he had killed him. So he shot a defenseless man lying on the floor that he could have just walked away from. That's drugs. Now, he went to prison, and he left behind 2 sons, and they interviewed both sons. The first son was on his way to jail, had also shot and wounded someone in a robbery, I believe, and they said to him, "Your father is in prison for killing somebody in order to support a habit which you followed. Why did you choose that way?" And the man said, "With a father like mine, how else would I have turned out?" Well, they asked the same question of the second son, who may have been the first son, the other son. The other son had married a good woman, had children, was a great father, worked in an ordinary job. He was the manager of a supermarket and worked hard to support his family and led a good life. And they said to him, "With a father like yours, how did you turn out like you have?" And he said, "With a father like mine, how else could I have turned out?" See, so this thing attacks, it destroys people, or it creates a monument to self-discipline and courage, and there's no knowing how it's going to turn out. I hope that if you are in a situation like this, I'm no help, of course, but I'd always be glad to hear from anybody who is meeting extraordinary challenges. I believe that heroes are walking in and out of our lives all the time. There's one that just walked in, Casey. No exaggeration, my friend, you are a hero. You stepped in when one of the alcoholics in your life died in alcohol-related accident, I think, and you stepped in and was a father for his child. That makes you a hero in my mind. And for the man who has been 3 years dry, good on you. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.